Well, hello, class. We're on the last leg of our historic tour through New England, and today we're in the town of Florence, Massachusetts, which is in the county of Northampton. And I'm delighted today to be with my friend and my teacher, John Bolard, who happens to live here in this historic town. Other famous residents of this town that we're probably reading or studying about in our course is Sojourner Truth. And this, as you can see, is a statue in honor of the great abolitionist Sojourner Truth, who lived right in this town. As a matter of fact, our host just took us for a walk through the town and took us to her home, which was right down the street here. And the statue, we learned, is erected in this spot because this was one of the famous churches of the period and a famous square where people would have public lectures, discussions, and debates. As you probably know from reading in class and from the lectures, that Sojourner Truth was born in upstate New York. Probably spoke Dutch before she learned to speak English. Was a slave who was manumitted when slavery came to an end in New York. Although Nell Painter, in her book, A Biography of Sojourner Truth, talks about her actually going to court to get one of her sons, who the master was attempting to sell him into slavery before slavery came to an end in New York. Another interesting thing about Sojourner Truth, her name is a moniker that she took for herself, Sojourner meaning one who travels, and Truth, who speaks the truth. And this is exactly what she did here in Florence. She traveled and she would speak the truth, both in a religious sense and in a political sense, in opposition to slavery. One of the most outspoken abolitionists, particularly for women of that period to speak in public and to speak out forcefully. There are a lot of lessons that we can draw from her confidence in her ability and the nobility of her cause, even though she never learned to read and write herself. She was close associates with Frederick Douglass, and you are reading the narrative of Frederick Douglass in our course, who, through his own efforts and with the support of sympathetic people, learned to read and write and then published his book. But they knew each other and they interacted here in Massachusetts, along with William Lloyd Garrison, the president of the American Anti-Slavery Society, and other abolitionists here in this community. But John, you were telling us a little bit about the history of this town, and I think my class would like to know that there were communities like this, particularly in New England, of conscientious and thoughtful and courageous people.
That's right. It was a community which recognized equal rights for everyone, men and women. I'm not sure how the young children played into their voting process, but everyone had equal rights. Everyone's beliefs were respected, no matter what their religion was or what their lack of religion was. And they shared in the work that everyone did together. They owned their property communally, and everyone was treated equally. Probably one of the reasons that Sojourner Truth came here to Florence is that David Ruggles had moved up here around that same time, a little bit sooner, of course. He lived in New York City for quite a while, became very important there, and is one of the people who is known to have helped Frederick Douglass to freedom. He was the person who met Frederick Douglass in New York, taught him how to survive and behave in this northern culture. And then when David Ruggles became ill and partially blind, he came up here to Florence, and that attracted numerous other both abolitionists and former slaves and fugitive slaves who were taken care of here and who were helped on to further freedom if they wanted to go on to Canada or to other parts.
One final thought that I'd like you to think about in relation to Sojourner Truth. You're probably reading a speech, at least a translation of a speech called Ain't I a Woman? And as Nell Painter points out, a lot of controversy about that speech because of the language, the kind of southern dialect, the ain't. And he points out that often people think of all slaves as being southern and slavery being a southern phenomenon. Even today, people in the North often think of themselves as never having been slave states, where she was a New England slave, and so she questions whether she actually would use that southern dialect that was attributed to her. She also points out subtle ways that she empowered herself, even though she couldn't read and write. She did sing. She would sell portraits of her likeness, and even in the way that she dressed, she was very concerned about the control of her image and how she was represented. In that she was a slave, and often they would want to depict slaves out in the field, picking cotton, carrying loads. In her photographs, often you see her not only wearing glasses, but with a book. And even though we know she couldn't read, she wanted to present herself as a lady. And so this is very much with a shawl, a walking stick, a bonnet on her head. This would have represented a refined, intelligent woman, which she was, and that's the way she wanted to be depicted in all of her likenesses. And I think that this statue is very fitting in that. So a lot for us to think about. I hope you decide to maybe write something about this in our discussion, and something we could bring up in class. Well, thank you very much. Hope you're enjoying the course. Take care and be well.